All right, so let's dive into it. We're talking late Roman Empire.
A fascinating period.
Oh, absolutely. Christianity's on the rise, challenging the old gods. It's a real clash of worldviews.
Yeah, a real battle for the hearts and minds.
And right in the thick of it, you have St. Augustine.
A giant, intellectually.
Oh, a total rock star, at least in the philosophy world.
Right. And we've got these letters between him and this grammarian, Maximus, both from the same town, Medora.
Which automatically makes it interesting, right? I
It
mean,
adds a whole other dimension.
because it's not just some abstract theological debate. It's like two people who probably knew each other.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh.
Probably grew up together, studied the same texts, and now here they are on opposite sides of this massive cultural shift.
And that comes through in their letters, especially Maximus's letter to Augustine, Epistle 16. It's respectful, even warm at times, but there's this underlying tension, this...
It's almost like a subtle jabbing, wouldn't you say?
Oh, totally. Like, come on, Augustine, you're a smart guy. Surely you see the flaws in this new path you're on.
Exactly. And he does it so cleverly. Like, he starts by appealing to this idea of a supreme being, something everyone can agree on.
Right? Common ground.
He even uses the Roman gods as examples, suggesting they're just different expressions of this one divine force. It was a common argument back then, a way to kind of reconcile the old with the new.
Right. Like, hey, we're all worshiping the same guy, just in different ways.
Exactly. But then Maximus throws in this curveball. He brings up the Christian martyrs and their names,
Yeah.
specifically Namphanian.
Which, let's be honest, sounds a little strange, especially compared to the Roman gods, right?
Right. And you can almost sense a little chuckle in his words, like, really, Augustine?
Yeah.
This is who you're putting your faith in. It's a clever rhetorical tactic.
Oh, totally. By focusing on something seemingly small, like a name, he subtly undermines the seriousness of Christian beliefs.
Exactly. It's like he's saying, let's not get carried away with all this talk of salvation. Have you considered how odd these names sound?
And he keeps going. He contrasts how Christians worship in secret with the very public nature of Roman religious rituals.
The grand processions, the sacrifices, the temples, all out in the open.
It's like he's implying that Christianity is somehow less legitimate because it doesn't have the same outward show.
Exactly.
Yep.
And this is where we start to see the heart of Maximus's argument. For him, religion wasn't just a personal belief. It was the bedrock of Roman society.
The glue that held everything together.
Exactly. And along comes Christianity with its emphasis on individual faith and sometimes secret gatherings. It must have felt like a threat to the very fabric of Roman life.
So it makes you wonder, why engage with Augustine on these specific points? Was Maximus genuinely curious, trying to understand this new faith? Or was there something more going on, maybe an attempt to, I don't know, chip away at Augustine's confidence?
It's a question that has puzzled scholars for centuries, and it's one we'll explore as we delve deeper into Augustine's response.
Because, oh boy, does he have a response.
A real head-scratcher, right? And Augustine, being Augustine, he doesn't just respond, he crafts this masterful rebuttal.
Oh, he was loaded for bear, wasn't he? I mean, you can practically hear the ink sizzling on the parchment.
Right. And he starts by kind of mirroring Maximus's playfulness. Like he's saying, all right, my friend, you want to engage in a battle of wits, game on.
I love that. He's not backing down from a challenge.
Not a chance.
Huh.
But he's also not taking the bait entirely. He's careful to maintain this air of respect, of intellectual camaraderie.
So how does he tackle Maximus's points, specifically this idea that the Roman gods are just different aspects of the one true God?
He goes right for the heart of it. Augustine points out the inherent contradiction in saying that a God who can be, for lack of a better term, imprisoned in a statue, is also the boundless, all-powerful God of the Christians.
It's such a sharp observation. Like, how can you have it both ways?
Yeah. Exactly. And then there's the whole Namphanian issue. Remember how Maximus kind of chuckled at the name? Augustine uses that to deliver this brilliant counterpunch.
Okay, remind me, how does he spin that one?
He points out quite directly that both he and Maximus are African. That Punic culture, with its own rich history and traditions, deserves a little more respect than a dismissive chuckle.
Which is such a powerful statement, especially in the context of the Roman Empire. He's basically saying, hey, our cultures matter too.
Absolutely. It's this reminder that identity was just as complex then as it is now. And he goes even further. Augustine dissects the name Namphanian, suggesting it could even be interpreted as signifying purity and sacrifice.
So he flips the script completely.
Yeah.
What Maximus saw as a weakness, Augustine reframes as a potential strength.
Masterfully done, all right. And just to drive the point home, he lists a few Roman gods whose names and attributes, well, let's just say they don't exactly scream holiness.
Oh, I bet. I can only imagine the ones he picked.
It's like he's saying, let's not be so quick to judge based on appearances, especially when our own pantheons are full of, shall we say, colorful characters.
And of course, we can't forget Maximus's point about Christians worshiping in secret. How does Augustine address that one?
With his signature wit and a healthy dose of historical context, he reminds Maximus that plenty of Roman cults, particularly the Bacchic cults, were shrouded in secrecy.
Oh, right. The ones with all the, how shall we put this, enthusiastic rituals.
Exactly, the ones that made even some Romans blush. It's a brilliant tactic. Augustine takes Maximus's own criticism and reviews its hypocrisy.
It's classic Augustine, right. But what I find fascinating is that through all the back and forth, the intellectual sparring, there's this undercurrent of genuine engagement, almost the sadness that they find themselves on opposite sides of this growing divide.
It's like they're both wrestling with these massive existential questions, trying to find their own truth in a world that's rapidly changing around them.
It's like we're catching them in a quiet moment, right, where they can drop the formal philosophical arguments and just, I don't know, be real with each other.
And that's where it gets really interesting, because even in those quiet moments, even between old friends, there are things left unsaid, things that speak volumes about the world they lived in.
Like what? Give me an example.
Well, take the humor they use. It's obviously a way to keep things light, but you have to wonder if it's also a way to deflect, to avoid saying things that could be, well, dangerous.
Because let's not forget, openly criticizing the Roman gods, even jokingly, could land you in hot water.
Exactly. So the humor, the wit, it could be a survival tactic as much as anything else.
Okay, that makes sense. And what about Augustine's defense of Punic culture? That felt really charged, like it went beyond just disagreeing with Maximus's point.
It did, didn't it? It speaks to Augustine's own journey, his struggle to reconcile his North African identity with his Roman upbringing. Remember, he lived in a world where Roman culture was dominant. To challenge that, even subtly, was a big deal.
It makes you think about how much our own identities shape the way we see the world, even the way we approach questions of faith.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then there's the elephant in the room, the one neither of them addresses directly, Christian persecution. It was a very real threat at the time, but they dance around it.
Why do you think that is? Were they afraid?
It's hard to say for sure. Maybe they were trying to keep the conversation intellectual, avoiding anything that could be seen as political. Or maybe some things were just too dangerous to put in writing, even in a private letter.
So we're left to read between the lines to try to piece together the full picture based on what they don't say as much as what they do say.
Which is what makes studying history so fascinating, right? It's like solving a puzzle, but with half the pieces missing. We're left to fill in the blanks with our own interpretations.
And in the case of Augustine and Maximus, those interpretations are still debated today. Were they trying to change each other's minds, or were they simply trying to understand, to find common ground in a world that was splitting apart?
We may never know for sure, but the fact that we're still asking these questions centuries later speaks to the power of their ideas, the way they continue to resonate with us today.
Exactly. It reminds us that history isn't just about the past, it's about the enduring questions, the big ideas that connect us across time and culture.
So the next time you find yourself face to face with history, whether it's in a book, a letter, or even a podcast, remember to listen for those silences, for the things left unsaid. You never know what hidden depths you might uncover.
Truer words have never been spoken. That's all the time we have for today, but join us next time for another deep dive into the past.